In order to get to 8 figures, in order to get to 9 figures from 8 figures, you have to consistently put yourself at risk. Okay, and so what I mean by that is you have to consistently do things that are uncomfortable. It doesn't stop once you start the business. In fact, most of the time, if you're running a business, you should be in discomfort at most points in time. Because if you are not, then you are probably not achieving what you could be. And I think a lot of the times people think that in order to achieve, I have to feel comfortable and confident in myself. I have never achieved anything worthwhile while feeling confident. Most of the time, I'm scared. I was insanely anxious and so nervous. Like, it wakes me up at night, gets me up in the morning, like I can't relax. Like, I was super worked up over it. Here's the thing. If you don't put yourself in the situation and you don't do that thing, you don't show yourself what you're capable of. What's not easy is being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am constantly choosing to be comfortable in the short term and creating long-term dysfunction for myself. I am capping myself. I have feelings of anxiety and stress and things like that all the time, and I want to avoid these feelings, but I don't. And the reason I don't is because I know that I'm just going to create more problems for myself down the road. If I look at the behaviors that I had before we got to 8 figures, a lot of it was trying to avoid these things. And the reality is that in order to get to a higher level in business, you have to accept the discomfort that comes with it. And you have to not try and run from it.
Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them, because I want to wake up every single day and get pushed by somebody who's doing a lot more than me. And in watching their videos, it inspires me to be bolder, to have more courage, and to go chase down the life of my dreams. And I hope it does the same for you. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Leila Hormozi, and my take on her top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2 is develop sales skills.
When you're first starting off in business, you don't need to think sales like, am I building a giant sales department, a sales org? You just need to figure out, can you sell? Because in the beginning, the best salesperson is actually the founder. In the beginning of every business that Alex and I started, we were the first salespeople. And at acquisition.com, that means we were the first ones that were closing the first deals. It is one of the most paramount pieces of the business because it is the bridge between the marketing and the back end. You learn so much about the customer through doing sales that I think you would be doing yourself a disservice in the beginning by not doing this starting out. The more people that you talk to and have sales conversations with, the more people that you understand who is a fit for my product or service and who isn't. Because a lot of the times people think, oh, I just can't sell. But it might actually be that you're trying to sell to the wrong people. It was the first skill that I understood personally in our businesses. And because of it, I was able to learn so many other skills because I had that foundation. I think that the best way to get better at sales when you're first starting off is to stop labeling it as sales. I didn't read a ton of books on sales, and I didn't know a lot about sales before I started doing sales. I was told that I was just signing somebody up for a gym. Through that process of signing somebody up, I think it relieved a lot of pressure. It's not convincing people, it's not coercing people, it's just showing them, you want this, I have this, we are matched. The best way to sell is just be honest with people, to tell the truth and state the facts about what you provide, about what you do, and about who's best for your product or service.
Rule number 3 is deal with negativity.
How do you deal with negative comments? And this is kind of I would think in 13 months, is kind of a newer thing for you personally to experience versus like negative comments about your company. So talk about that a little bit.
I absolutely expected to have a lot of negativity because I told Alex as I started making content, I looked at him and I was like, I'm a little weird though. And he was like, what? And I was like, no, like I'm not, like I love business. Yeah. I love working all the time. Like but I also like love working out and I love doing this. Like there's a lot of like contradiction in there. And I was like, I don't think a lot of people are going to like me, men specifically. And he was like, probably not. And I was like, I'm prepared. So I think it was like a conscious decision in terms of, I knew going into it, I was like, I know who I am. I know how I present. I know the things that I already in public, in person with people, rub people the wrong way. So I'm like, that's going to come out in the comments for sure. The way that I've dealt with it is a couple things, which is like, you know, in the beginning, there's definitely been comments where like I've gotten it and it's upset me. You know, like someone makes a video making fun of you and you see it when you're like at a party with friends or like something. Like I remember I was at a New Year's Eve party and someone like sent me a video that someone made like breaking down like me and like the video and like they just tore down everything about me, how I looked, how I talked, like the content. It was just awful. And I remember I was like, who? Like I literally went to the bathroom and I just sat there and I was like, who am I going to be? And I was like, am I going to be that girl that like lets a stranger tear her day apart? Or am I going to be somebody who sets an example for other women of how they can react to the people that tear them apart? And I really just believe that
Nothing has more meaning than what you give to it. And so when someone comments something about me or about the content that I'm making, I don't take it personally. It means nothing about me. And guess what? It's okay if they don't like me. It's okay if they don't agree with my content. I don't need to argue with them. I don't need to enter the situation. And if anything, that's what people want, is they want you to enter the conversation with them. I have no interest in this conversation, nor do I have time for it. And so I'm like, I'm busy building a business over here. If you want to troll on my shit all day, that's cool. But like, we wouldn't be friends in real life. So why would I engage with you on YouTube? And so that's kind of how I look at it. It's just, typically those people are insecure. You've said something that provokes insecurity. It contradicts a belief they have. I mean, I'll watch videos and be like, oh, I don't like that guy. And then I'm like, why do I not like the guy? And I'm like, oh, he said something that contradicts a belief I have. And then I'm like, it's not that I don't like him. It's like he said something that agitated me, right? But a lot of people don't have that level of self-awareness. They're just like, oh, I'm going to say bad things about this person because on some level they make me feel insecure or they contradict my worldview. I'm okay with that. And I think it's just like, you have to accept that you cannot stop it. You cannot make it go away. If you try to make it go away, it won't. Like if you try to be someone else, it won't go away. And if anything, if you try to be someone you're not so that you can avoid negative comments, I think at the end of the day, you're going to be very dissatisfied because you're still going to get them. And now you're not authentic. So now you don't even like the content you're putting out.
Rule number 4 is overcome your fears.
If you're looking at yourself or you're looking at people on your team and you're trying to figure out how to break past this, right? How to get out of constantly choosing short-term comfort and then sacrificing your long-term functionality as a human, right? By limiting yourself, by creating these limits on yourself, by constantly choosing comfort. There's 3 things that I do, right? One is I will make a list of things that I am avoiding. Because I think most of the time, the things that we get scared of, the things that we constantly seek to, not do anything about are the things that we're avoiding. And so if you just sit down and you brain dump and you go, what am I avoiding right now? That's the first thing you want to do. And if you're coaching someone on this, you want to say, I want you to write down everything you're avoiding right now in your role. So in your role, maybe if you're talking to them about their life in general, but in general, I would say you're talking about their job. And so it's like, what are you avoiding right now? The second thing that you want to write down is what are you doing to perpetuate the problem? So most people don't just have a problem. And I myself am included in this. I am coaching myself all the time on this stuff. You have a problem, but then you perpetuate that problem by acting like you're scared of the problem. So think about it like this, right? You're scared of elevators. Somebody's scared of elevators. And you can use it like, when I'm saying this, I'm just giving you the analogy. A lot of times it's scared of hard conversations, scared of going live, scared of making social media posts, scared of whatever, right? Talking, social events, etc. Say you're scared of elevators. And so instead of just being like, wow, I'm scared of elevators every time I go in a freaking elevator, it sucks. You say, I am going to avoid elevators at all costs. And I will not go to a building with elevators, and I will not ride, on an elevator, and I will not live in a building with elevators, and I won't go anywhere with elevators because I cannot do elevators. Okay. I actually know somebody who had this fear. And because of that, they couldn't live in certain buildings because they were so damn scared of elevators. But what if instead that person said, I am scared of elevators. Second course of action. What am I doing to perpetuate this problem? I continue to avoid elevators. Okay. I am no longer going to avoid elevators. I'm going to commit to feeling the short-term discomfort of going in the elevator. And then long-term knowing that I will be able to be a normal functioning person who this does not affect their life. Because yes, I get nervous in elevators, but eventually the nervousness goes away. And it goes away faster if I confront the elevator. That is the second thing you want to do. You want to ask yourself what you're doing to perpetuate the problem. What behaviors have you created around that problem to make it exist even more? A lot of the times you look at like substances. People drink and they smoke to avoid something. And because of that, you're teaching yourself literally that you cannot deal with that emotion. That in order to calm yourself down, in order to relax, in order to get some respite, you must drink, you must smoke, you must take a pill. That's not true. But you don't give yourself the chance to see that it's not true because you continue to do those behaviors. Okay. So the first thing is, what am I avoiding? The second thing is, how am I perpetuating this behavior, feeling, etc. situation? And then the last thing you want to do is say, if I was not afraid of this thing, if I was not avoiding this thing, what would I do? Because you can come at it from 2 angles. There's the behavior angle, and then there's the thinking angle. I find for myself, when I have these situations, I have to ask myself, what would someone who's not uncomfortable, not afraid, etc., what would they do? And eventually, if I do that thing enough, if I act unafraid enough, my brain will catch up and be like, there is nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to avoid. That's the third piece. You have to ask yourself what someone would do who was not anxious, scared, nervous about this situation.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5 is be consistent.
What the hell were you able to do to your habits in order so that you can freaking show up now? And what are the habits you've actually had to ditch in order to be a freaking badass and go after that dream of yours?
I'll tell you something that I tell people when they always come to me and they're trying to lose weight, which is they say like, Leila, I just can't be consistent. And I'm like, that's not true, because you do consistently overeat, right? And so I think that rings so true to me, because there were a lot of things that I did consistently that got me those results. And I had to then consistently do other things to get the results that I get now. But I think that for a very long period of time when I was making that change, a lot of people say like, did you use positive visualization? And like, you're really like bringing all these like great feelings into, and I didn't have any of that. What I was able to channel or tap into was all these negative feelings that I had. And I was able to then say like, I'm angry and I'm anxious and I have all this like angst inside of me. And instead of putting it into all of these things, I'm going to put it into things that are going to make my life better. The day after the 6th time I was arrested, my dad, they brought me to my parents' house because whatever, they didn't know where my house was. And I think that was what was on my license at the time. And I woke up and the immediate feeling of like absolute dread, right? Just like panic. And I was like, oh my God, I don't remember what happened last night. What happened? And then I like looked to the nightstand and then there's like the arrest record. And I was like, I just remember like the worst anxiety I've ever had, like settling in, just feeling ashamed, just feeling honestly disgusted with myself. And I had to walk downstairs. So I was really thirsty. And my dad was sitting on the couch and I sat down because I'm in his house. He obviously had to deal with whatever happened last night. I'm not gonna be disrespectful and just like leave. And I sat down waiting, just like thinking this is when he's gonna let me have it, right? Like he's just gonna like rip into me. And instead I just remember he sat down, he looked at me and he almost had like tears in his eyes. And he was like, you can do whatever you want. I can't control you. You don't even live in this house anymore. He's like, but I just wanna tell you that I do think that if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to kill yourself. And I just felt so guilty because my dad, he's such a good person. Like he's just like the best person I know. And he's always been there for me. He's always encouraged me. He's always been a cheerleader for me when there was no evidence or reason to be. And I just felt horrible that I, like, whether it was, I think it then equated to like feeling horrible about myself, but I felt horrible that I did that to him. And in that moment, I went upstairs and then I got my stuff and I went home to my apartment and I just decided, I was like, it wasn't like, what are you going to stop doing? It was, you are now a different person. Who you are today is no longer who you are tomorrow. You don't do anything like what Leila has been doing. Leila, who's getting arrested and drinking and hanging out with these people, no longer, that's not who you are. You are a new person. And I just remember saying that to myself. I was like, I have a new identity and I am now a new person. So what does this new person do? She goes to the gym every day. She doesn't eat like and overeat. She doesn't hang out with people who aren't going anywhere in life. She has a vision for her life. She reads. She doesn't like binge Netflix and go, watch movies till 3 a.m. She lives on her own and isn't surrounded by people who are, doing things that aren't productive for their lives. She gets good grades, even though maybe the college isn't what she wants to do. It's because it's a representation of hard work. And she works a lot and works really hard. And so it wasn't even like mechanically, how do I change all these habits, which I think I would probably talk more to now. In that moment, it was so much emotion of just feeling so fed up with myself that I said, I'm assuming a new identity. And this new identity, it's easy to evaluate what she does and doesn't do. And those habits just happen to come with it.
Rule number 6 is focus on your product.
At the end of the day, if the product is good, it markets for you. And so if you want to make your life easier, focus on the product first. So a lot of what that looks like for a small business is you have such an advantage because, like I said, you should be taking the sales calls. You should also be asking people, what do they want? In the beginning, you just need a product that meets the needs or wants of the customer. And you need to get an MVP out there. It doesn't mean it's a MVP. It means it's an MVP that you're going to iterate on it over time. Don't think about solving 16 problems. You can develop other things for that. Product development at this point is going to be solving one problem very well, and you can then package that into your offer and deploy it into the marketplace when you're selling and marketing. Something I did in the beginning of Gym Launch is that when I would be talking to people, I'd be talking about our product or service, and they would say like, well, what about this? I would just write it down. So I was like, that's a great idea. I should be taking all the objections and then figuring out how I can add those into our product or service to make a better product for the customer. In the beginning, the simplest way that you can track how well your product does is word of mouth. How many people are inquiring for a sales call or opting into your marketing funnel because somebody referred them to, not because they're incentivized by making 50% commission on that person, but because that person said you have a good product or service. Product development, I would put it on the A tier because sometimes it's not the smartest thing to develop the product like full blown before you've tried to create an offer or sell it. Oftentimes in the beginning, you have to change it like anywhere between 5 and 10 times before you get it right. It becomes a very imperative skill after you've confirmed with the market that product is what they want to buy.
Rule number 7 is know your audience.
How did you figure out who you wanted to speak to? Because you have done a lot of different things, right? I mean, you've built successful businesses and sold them. You started acquisition.com. Was it an actual strategy to say, I want to talk to this person because that will help us do this thing? Or did you just know who you wanted to talk to at the beginning?
I don't think I even know still who I'm talking to. No. I think I have a general idea now of who I'm talking to, but the people that I want to reach and want to help, I think are a little more rare than typical, right? And so I'm finding like the different buckets of what I like to talk to. So I think it's two things, which is like CEOs and COOs who want to grow and scale their businesses. Like they just want no BS, like tell me what to do. I'm going to go do it. Like, and I can just give you, like, I love dishing out the tactics, right? The second is probably actually employees. Employees who want to grow in their career. Maybe they want to start a business. Maybe they want to figure out how to get to an executive level because I genuinely love doing that in my business. Therefore, why would I not make content on it? And that's something I've recently discovered. So I'm like, oh, I love talking to people that are working in the business. I would like to help more. And I would love to have videos that, one, the CEOs and the operators can take and they can learn themselves. And then two, they can share them with their team and be like, go watch this. This is how we're going to promote. This is how you can grow in your career. Like that's the stuff I really like doing. So I think I just think about who do I like talking to on a day-to-day basis. So like if you're an entrepreneur and you're watching this, video, I think I would be thinking to myself, like, who do you already talk to naturally? That's probably who your audience is. So like Alex, for example, naturally his friends who he surrounds himself with, etc., they're usually marketing-based CEOs or, sales centered CEOs or people that are faces of the brand. That's who he's always liked talking to. So like, why wouldn't that be his content? You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm like, oh, these are the people I already like talking to. So that makes sense. I would make content for them because one, I've been there / I am there. And then third, it's already what I do. So I already know it.
Rule number 8 is change your environment.
I was in an environment where it was acceptable to do what I was doing. And I took myself out of that environment and put myself in a new one where that was not acceptable. I found friends who would find that behavior unacceptable. I lived in a place where that would be unacceptable. And so I moved. I lived in a house with 6 people. I moved out on my own, right? I then committed to having a job, which meant that I had responsibility, which made a lot of the things I did unacceptable because I wouldn't be able to have that job if I did those things. And then I got new friends who, if I was to act that way, they would not be my friend. I am all for all the things I do internally. But gosh, if we can help change by changing our environment, why would we not do it? Another example, I've done that later in my life is like I sold my last company, Gym Launch, moved immediately. I was like, I don't want to be Gym Launch Leila anymore. I want to be a different Leila. And so I don't really want to do that in this house. Moved. And I remember that was the first time that I felt the power of my environment though, because I realized those voices in your head come up, right? And we get them all the time. But if your environment reinforces those voices and makes them louder, it is very hard to resist them. And I think that being able to engineer your environment is truly a skill. And I think you've mastered it. Look how you've built your life. And I think that I am so much more intentional with it now. Make it so that your environment makes it easy to achieve your goals and hard not to comply with them. Like really. Because if all of a sudden none of your friends drink and they would find it, you know, say repulsive if you got drunk, would you drink? We have so much, like other people have so much power over us, people that are close to us, that I think in many ways we can take advantage of that when we're trying to change. You know, even Alex and I, when one of us is trying to make a change, we tell the other person so that they can reinforce the behaviors we want and, you know, try to help us extinguish the ones we don't want. And I find it so powerful that we help each other with that because it helps it go so much faster than if we're trying to do it on our own.
Rule number 9 is improve your communication skills.
Communication, in the context of business, is the sending and receiving of information to make something known. What does that look like? It's how are you writing emails? Is what you say in the email what somebody understands when they read the email? Speaking to your team. Is what you're saying communicating what you're thinking in your head and then translating that to them? Setting expectation, ensuring that what you believe a job is what an employee believes a job is. That is where communication comes into play. When you are new to business, this is typically not somebody's strong suit. It's usually something that's developed over time. Most of us tend to either over-communicate or under-communicate. And what that looks like when you're unskilled is usually like you're silent or you ramble all the time. I don't think that I was the best communicator at first. I tended to be more of like a silent type, but I realized that that actually was bad communication. I think that the best ways to learn how to communicate are to learn how to listen first. I know that sounds contrary because communicating seems like, oh, it's talking. But I actually think that the reason that I was able to quickly get good at communication was I learned to be very good at listening. Asking a person what they mean, actively listening to them, engaging in the conversation, is it teaches you how to take perspectives. And if you're able to learn how to take the perspectives of different people, your customer, your employee, your vendor, then you are able to learn how to speak to them in a language that they understand and receive.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is love what you do.
I think when I was writing those tweets, it was in the age of not understanding consequences. I was in a period of my life where I don't think that I understood how what I did that day affected the next day, and the next day, and the next year. I also was viewing work still with a very traditional sense. I viewed it as something I didn't like. And I think that's just because I'd only ever had jobs that I didn't really like. So of course I'd built a negative association with work. One of the big switches has just been understanding that if you don't like your job, then you bring that into an association of saying, I don't like work. It's like, no, you've had a lot of jobs that you didn't like. They negatively reinforced you. And therefore you've built this association around work in general to be bad. But if you had had a bunch of jobs that were awesome, you had great bosses, you loved the place you worked, then you would say, I love work. If I were to go back to 2012 and look at who I am now, I would think you must have found something that you actually like. You must get a lot of reward from whatever the work is that you do because you keep wanting to do it. I think I first started to change my mindset around work later in the latter half of college after I'd made those tweets. I had a boss and she was fantastic at this cafe I worked at. I actually ended up really liking to work there, despite it being like a sandwich and smoothie shop that I just like made food at and smelled like grease all day. The work itself was not rewarding, but she was so rewarding as a boss. That was when I really started to actually like work. I think I continued to get reinforced by work because when I moved to California, it was very uncomfortable at first, but I learned sales and then I was quickly reinforced for sales. I made money quickly and then I got a lot of praise. Something that I thought I hated turned into something I really enjoyed and liked, and probably something that's like a cornerstone skill to every other skill I have. I believe that that was probably a big turning moment because I saw not even just like a neutral go to a positive. And then I think that continued into gym launch. When we started off, it was terrifying. Alex and I split to do launches. And I went to Hawaii and he went to Virginia. He called me and he was like, you really need to crush this launch in Hawaii. And I was like, planning to, but like, why you say that? He was like, his business partner just like stole all of this money. And I was like, in that moment, something that I was very stressed about doing, I rose to the occasion and I actually broke all of the records and I sold more people into that location than anyone ever did. He was like, holy shit, you're a badass. And like everyone there was like, holy shit, this girl's insane. I immediately got all this reinforcement from all these people. That was such a like confidence building experience for me that I realized that most of the experiences where I gain my appreciation for work come from entering a very uncomfortable situation. One that I might not think I like, one that might not be enjoyable at first, but then it turns into that because I stay in it long enough to suck, then suck less, then suck even less, then be kind of good, then actually be good, then be great, then be exceptional. I think a lot of those experiences taught me work capacity. I think a lot of people say, I can only work a certain amount of hours a day, and then I'm just like, poop. And I actually look at it like a muscle. If you train the muscle hard enough for long enough, the muscle will grow. So I'm like, well, there's no reason that I wouldn't adapt physiologically to working more. So it doesn't necessarily have to be hours worked. It can also be, how many creative hours do I have in my brain? How many hours of filming do I have capacity for? How many hours of sales do I have capacity for? I think a lot of people, what happens is they have one day of really long work and then they kind of backpedal because it doesn't feel good, right? It feels like, oh, it's overwhelming. I was really stressed. But the only reason you were stressed is because it was a new experience. You haven't acclimated to it yet. But if you can wait through it and acclimate, then you can do a lot more than you think you can because you realize how much you're capable of doing. Success is easier than you think. It actually just boils down to one thing, which is avoiding bad decisions. Let's look at Oprah, who started a television show and became the host of it. The Rock, who started his career in entertainment and continued in different sectors of entertainment. Jeff Bezos, who started a store that sold books and turned into one of the biggest e-commerce stores essentially in the world. What do all these people have in common? They've all avoided making career-ending dumb decisions. No matter how many good decisions you make, if you make one bad decision, it can wipe all the good ones out. And I call this a net zero decision. I knew a guy in high school. He had everything going for him. Got a scholarship to an Ivy League college, had all the best friends, got a great internship, and then he came home for one summer between college. He decided to drink and he decided to drive. And that night he actually hit somebody. And because of that incident, he lost his scholarship, he lost his internship, he lost his job, and he lost most of his friends. His life was never the same after that. And that guy, who might have gone on to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, he now continues to work at a bar in our hometown. He made one net zero decision that wiped out every good decision he'd made for 15 years leading up to that. We had a company that came to us and they wanted to work with us. We were doing our diligence on the company and I asked to speak with the operator because apparently this person was running the whole company and the founder was just kind of taking a back seat. So I met with the operator and I could immediately tell that this person was not it. They couldn't tell me their metrics, they were micromanaging people, and it was clear that they didn't have the best intentions with the founder. As soon as I talked to that person on the phone, I was like, one, I don't think we can invest in this company right now because I don't think we have the right leadership. And two, I need to tell them that this person's probably not right for the role. And so I met with the founder and I told him, and he said, Leila, I don't think that's the case. She's amazing. Well, he called me 8 weeks later, and that person not only had quit, but they took the whole team with them and essentially left the company at 50% less than it was doing in terms of revenue because they also stole the customers. Another example is that when we owned Gym Launch, that year we had made like 42 million in terms of revenue. Our EBITDA was fairly high, like 17 million EBITDA. We got to a point where our churn was higher than we wanted it to be. At that point in time, we didn't have a CFO, we didn't have a strong finance department, and I remember our team came to us and they kind of almost had like a little intervention at the time. They were like, listen, we're priced too high. We really need to cut the price. And in that moment, we just made a net zero decision because we decided to cut the price. And instead of decreasing our churn, we just decreased our EBITDA by $5 million a year. We didn't decrease churn at all, in fact. That's a net zero decision because that's very hard to get back. It took years for the company to recover from that. And it was definitely a decision that I wasn't happy that I made. So what most people try to do is they try to learn how to make good decisions. You don't need to learn how to make good decisions. We just need to learn how to avoid the terrible one. So in order to learn how to not make a terrible decision, we need to dissect why people make such terrible decisions. The first reason is called the paradox of choice. Given a situation where you have more options than less, you're more likely to make a bad decision or no decision at all. Customers, given more choices, are actually 10 times less likely to buy than customers that have less choices. For example, in a grocery store, there were 24 jars of jam for people to choose from. 3% of shoppers that came in for jam bought jam. In another grocery store, there were 6 choices of jam, and 40% of the shoppers bought jam. The more options somebody has to choose from, the less likely they are to make a decision. I see this all the time when it comes to starting a business. People who don't start a business are not the ones who have limited options. If somebody has no way to make money but to start a business, they will find a business to start. If somebody has many things that they could choose from, they could freelance, they could start this business, they could take this job, then that person is more likely to not start a business because they're overwhelmed by the optionality they have. We had a portfolio company that came in and they actually on the sales call would present 6 different options to their customers to buy. And we said, oh shoot, we're gonna be able to increase the closing percentage, probably double it just by eliminating products. And we did. We actually doubled their closing percentage by taking it from 6 products to 2.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you're different. you are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Alex Hormozi, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
The brand that you're going to build in a local community is going to be based on the quality of your product and your service. Your reputation is going to be based on that. And so if you feel like you want to strengthen your brand, strengthen the product.